Look, today's episode is going to be a little different. I just got this motivator on board. He just joined First to Fight today, but this brain he didn't just start with zero, right? He's not coming on trying to learn the ropes, trying to get involved with everything. Homie's already got 9 rentals, cash flowing every single one of them, stumbled his way into success through that portfolio. And now that he has the active income through residual, right, he wants to be able to build the wholesale piece as well, right? So when it comes down to this is where I say we're always students, right? We come with our hand up and not our hand out. And something I wanted to showcase for you guys is, of course, getting introduced to him, right? Welcoming him aboard for the First to Fight piece. But homie is an avid buyer. What do I always talk about when it comes down to making sure that we can have quick, concise closings? It's reverse engineering what we have. He has discussed with me, hey, I'm liquid. I'm looking at buying. I buy in Rockford, Illinois. I want to be around other Marines, and I would love to make sure that they can get paid an assignment fee if I can tackle good opportunities. So not only we're going to learn about this, right, we're going to talk about really building out the portfolio, starting in an area where that's going to be a lot, I would say, cheaper, how he's able to still cash flow, really kind of lean into the portfolio piece. But at the same time, we are going to end with his buy box, with posturing him. So that way, every single one of you can go to Rockford, Illinois, look exactly what we need and start doing our presence patrol. I'm excited for me because as an investor, what do I hear? I hear, oh, buyer in Rockford, Illinois. He's okay getting on market. Here's his buy box. This is what he wants. What am I going to do? I'm going to smile and dial, baby, till I get him in front of an opportunity. We are bridge builders for this gentleman, right? So without further ado, and we are going to get ready to rock and roll. David, I know he popped on. I'm like, hey, I kind of love your story. I like everything that you're about. He popped in immediately, and I'm like, we're going to showcase this because I got a bunch of hungry Marines who are calling for me for the 50K that we have set aside in Dallas. Obviously, we're getting in front of pre-foreclosures, filling the CRM with opportunity in North Carolina. But if you're a buyer ready to rock and roll and you want to get in front of more opportunity to expand that portfolio, who better to call than every single person in here listening to you run your suck, hearing about you, your business, ask any questions you have so that way we can get you in front of more opportunity and really continue to win with everybody in here. That sounds pretty fair to me, right?
Sounds awesome.
Okay. Well, hey, I mean, real quick, David, I'm gonna ask a couple questions. Quick background.
So I was in the reserves. My initial school was including boot camp, was about a year long. I did electrical optical ordnance repair. I stationed my entire enlistment with 224. I did 8 years, so the non-obligatory time. Then I did 1 year extension, so I go to Iraq in 04 to 05. So I got in 98 and I got out in 07. Yeah, that's about it. I don't know where else can we go. First off, thanks for having me, everybody, and good evening, Marine. That's awesome.
I appreciate you jumping on. I know you're like, dude, this is like my first 4 hours in here, but this is great. This is going to be great. We're going to have a lot of fun questions for you, and I highly recommend every Marine that's jumping in here, right, when we identify the buy box and you guys want to be serious about getting him a deal, reach out to David in this community. So, David, when you reserves 9 years in, when did real estate kind of hit your radar? What got you thrusted into get your first property or at least start getting involved in the industry?
All right, so I'll rewind a little bit. So when I got back from Iraq, I bought my first house that I lived in, and 2008 happened, and then I kind of sat on the property. I remodeled it myself, and then 2011 came, and I had capital, and the market was low, and I said, well, I want to move out of my house because it was a small little starter home. And I still own that first house today. So I became what I call a default landlord. I don't know how many people heard of it. Became a default landlord because I couldn't sell it in 2011. I was going to take a bath. Thank God I didn't really owe a whole lot on it. And that was my first rental. A lot of mistakes, but hey, things happen, right? I'll be glad to share them with anyone that wants to listen. I made my mistakes and
No, we are gonna. I mean, everybody falls in their face. I mean, I love talking about the losses. You got to be able to make sure that we're able to slap the table with with the bads as well. Because I mean, you cannot hide and undercover. You can't run a business without getting punched in the face a couple times. So you became a default landlord. Let's talk about buying your first deal. Did you go conventional or all cash?
So what I did is that I bought my first house conventional because I had more than 20%. I had all my deployment money and it was really cheap. It was 97.5 in Rockford. 2016. So I was working at my full-time job as a firefighter, and I was like, I'll work for the department I work part-time for, make some extra money because I have this rental and I don't know how it's going to shake out and everything else. but I started working probably 80 hours a week.
Wow.
And I was looking at like, all right, all this extra time I'm putting in, I'm making like a couple grand a month at the most. And then I looked at my rental and I'm like, man, I'm making almost $1,000 now that this thing's kind of like normalized after a few years. And I was like, this is where I need to be putting my effort, is in more rentals. And I told my wife, I said, I'll never take any other money out than that 62,000 for real
Good
estate.
man.
And that's it. And so I segregated, like this, I'm gonna have a business here. I'm gonna still work as a firefighter. And this is the money we use for the family. I got 4 kids, so they suck money up. And then this is the money I'm going to use for real estate. And then I'm going to dedicate it to that. My first purchase is I bought a house on Church and Burton in Rockford. It's a brick home. It was actually a sub 2 deal. But I didn't close it for a year. I think you and I talked about this earlier today. I didn't close it for a year. So I actually, and the thing was, at the time it was 2016. The market was still stagnant. Areas like Rockford didn't want to move properties, and all he wanted was to make sure when he left the property, he no longer had to deal with it. He's done with it. And he didn't want to be a landlord because he's moving 8 hours away or 9 hours away. I'm like, tell you what, how about I take over your, I gave him laid out to him, and he had a VA loan. He's in the Army, and made it work. I still have the loan today, and I still have the property today.
Wow. These are numbers that we're going to nerd out at the end. But listen, the subject too, guys, just to be able to confirm, is the debt is going to be able to remain in the seller's debt portfolio or profile. What he's able to do is he's able to take title, take over ownership of the home, and then rent that out and make sure that he makes payments on behalf of the seller, right? So that way they can grandfather into the rate. I have multiple sub twos myself. He just stated he put 2K down to be able to make sure that he can end up taking transfers for title, and then he
Mm-hmm.
rents it out and cash flows about 1550. That is still, that's insane. I mean, that's crazy. How much work did you have to put into that home to make it rent to ready?
Oh, it was rent to ready right away. I mean, I've owned it long enough to where I've replaced the windows and I've replaced a few things. Like I've done, as you go along, you replace things. It's a great house. It's almost 2,000 square feet, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car detached garage. Like I said, rents right now under market. I think I get like 1,750 for it, but 1,550 now. I think my payment, and I pay extra on it on the principal right now. I think my payment's like 800 a month, PITI. And like I said, it's really not a lot of maintenance. And yeah, it's just going up. It's one of those things like rentals as they go, they season and they get better. That was technically my first deal, but I didn't actually close that one for a year. But my technically one that I closed the first time was the one I was telling you about, where I actually did a contract for deed. So I bought it, and it was funny because I was on the other side of wholesaling. So I got started with this group, and I really they didn't offer any mentorship, in my opinion. Everything was just get it under contract and flip it over and all this other things. And when Trever, when you were talking, it put like that. I tell you, we're talking about. I was like, put a little ick in my mouth. But then when you said, "Hey, we're here to give people solutions," that's how I always looked at my real estate. Was I'm here to offer someone a solution. I don't put square pegs into round holes. Period. If someone doesn't belong doing business with me, and they belong on the MLS, I'm gonna be like, you need to go to the MLS. And I've told that to many people. Many people. You need to take it, whether it's on the phone or in person. So yeah, and then when you said, hey, we find solutions for people. So obviously we want to make sure we vet those that need us, and then we go ahead and we act upon it. I think that's awesome. I think that's the way to do wholesaling.
Brother, I appreciate it. A lot of people, lock it out, right? Of course, they try to corner a homeowner, try to, whether they move it or not, they put a memorandum against the property, they cloud the title, and they release it for a position or a fee on something that they never did anything to. I think that's disgusting. I am glad, and it's funny because you did let me know that for people who didn't know the wholesale piece, my first pillar, of course, out of the 3 that we discussed on the Start and Scale Day workshop is obviously wholesale, right? So when we position directly over into the novation, you have to set the reality of what a cash offer is. So it is crazy that you transitioned into sub 2 immediately. How did you know about sub 2?
So it was through that freedom mentorship. They brought it up like, oh, you can do a sub 2 or whatever. And man, I was flying blind because they didn't help any. I was like, all right, well, make this happen, I guess. Figured out how to open up an LLC on my own. Which isn't that hard, in all honesty. Once you do it, it's not that hard. You can do it in about 30 minutes online. But Yeah, I kind of figured it out. But the actual first one we talked about was I bought it cash. And like I said, I was on the other side of wholesaling. And we talked about this on our call. What happened was is that this person, I was getting some leads generated through another agency, like they call people. And I had reached out to the seller. They were in Florida, they're retired. They were going to sell this house for $25,000. This is back when houses in Rockford were going for 25,000. Wasn't in horrible shape.
Rockford's not that more expensive, brother.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, it's cheap. It's real cheap. But anyways, yeah, it's not much more expensive now. But anyways, I called him, and I was like, "Hey, you want to sell?" He's like, "No, it's already sold." I was like, "Oh, really?" And then as I was combing through Craigslist at the time, because back then you could find stuff there, I noticed the house. So I called the other guy, noticed that wasn't the guy, did a little bit of research, figured out, okay, who's lying, who's telling the truth. So it turns out this guy was a wholesaler, and all he was trying to do is flip it on Craigslist of all places. And he was slowly coming down in price. I actually had the wholesaler show me the house. But the funny thing about it was that this guy didn't have two nickels from the other. He had like a minivan that looked like it was worth $500. And I'm like, he's not going to be able to close on this. So that was technically my first deal. And I basically called the guy and I said, look, he's had it for how long? 2 months. And he's like, oh, no, he's going to close it. And he kept giving him all the excuses and everything else and blah, blah, blah. And I said, let me see your contract. And he didn't want to show it to me. And eventually showed it to me. It's literally one piece of paper with 5 sentences. And the last sentence had the weasel clause.
Yep.
And I said, see that last sentence there? That basically means he can dip whenever he wants and there's no skin off it. Like, what do you get from him? Nothing. Yep. And then I came out there, gave him my whole backstory and told him, hey, look, I'm not about doing business this way. I'm not about flip. I mean, I will flip it. I told him if it makes sense to flip it, I will. But I'm going to close on this because I looked at it. I put eyes on the property and I said, this works. That's one thing that attracted me to real estate is I'm like, you know what? If it's a bad deal with sweat equity, I can make it good. When I first started, you know what I mean? Like, all right, let's do this. Like, it's going to be hard work, but I can make it happen.
Now, I was going to say something that we prefaced earlier, which I love, is you don't make the money when you sell the deal. You make the money when you buy the deal.
Buy a
Right?
deal.
So I am really glad that you're coming at this from an investor perspective because everybody in here who's about to get their first deal, right, or people that have already gotten a couple deals, this is good to see it from the lens of a buyer, right? Even on the investment side. Having a wholesale deal strung along just means that we weren't comfortable with our numbers and we're trying to force feed an opportunity to an investor, right? If we don't make it easy to be able to bridge it to a buyer, they need to know where their numbers are. That's why we're going to go over the buy box necessary. But this is exactly why anchoring the right expectations with your seller, right? Over communicating and putting them in the right position to win is why you can seamlessly be able to really scale this up without having the headache of trying to have to wait now 45 days, extend this out. And the weasel clause he's talking about, guys, is he can just back out of this, right? And he can get his non-refund or his refundable earnest money out and completely just leave the seller blind, right? And just kind of leave them high and dry, even if they got strung along for a couple months. Now, why is this such a bad thing? Well, I mean, I understand protecting the earnest, right? There is an inspection clause, but once you commit to a home, I do believe you should commit to a home. And really, the seller, they're packing their belongings. They're getting ready to move, right? They're trying to move on with the next chapter of their life. And if you continue to string that along, you're not putting them in the right mindset whatsoever, right? So that's the weasel clause that he was discussing. And I'm glad he was able to come over to the homeowner and freaking, try to chop that limb off and be able to close. So that's badass.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I basically told him, I said, this guy isn't going to, doesn't have the means to close. And I literally showed him my bank accounts and I said, I can close. I can pay cash for this. And that's what I ended up doing. I ended up buying it for 15,000. Yeah, I think he initially had a contract with him for 20, and that's why he didn't want to show it to me. And I said, look, this guy's going to promise you whatever, but that doesn't mean he's going to deliver. I'm going to deliver at 15,000. I did. And what I did with that one is I literally sold it the exact same day in the same closing office to another investor. And I should have actually kept it, hindsight being what it is. But he paid me $5,000 down and $1,000 a month on a contract for 40 months. And obviously all the other bills were him. So I'm like, you know what? I got 10,000 out of my pocket basically, and I'm getting 1,000 a month for the next 40 months.
Wow, so creative. I love it, man. And that was in Rockford as well, correct?
Yep. All my deals are in Rockford or Winnebago County. Actually, Winnebago County is the way to put it.
Write that down. Winnebago County. We're going to get into a buy box soon, but for you, David, for Rockford itself, you just want to stack everything in one market just to kind of keep a pulse on your properties, I'm guessing?
You know what? I don't have to. I mean, the thing is like, it's nice to put eyes on things. I know there's tons of investors that are like, hey, I'm over here. I'm over here. You know, I got a
Yeah.
guy over here. I'm not that big. I don't think I want to. I don't know. Maybe I want to buy 20. Maybe I want to buy 30. Maybe I want to stop at 15. I don't know. But I do
Yeah.
know that when I go to a property, I put my eyes on it and I can see, like, here's what it's worth. Here's the neighborhood. You know, I mean, I guess holistically, I have a better understanding of what everything's about. You know, I think that Rockford's still going to be a strong market just because of its affordability and its location. I mean, it's basically close to three major markets. You're an hour from Chicago. I mean, I work in Chicago, for Christ's sake. You're an hour from Chicago, an hour from Madison, and Madison's booming, Madison, Wisconsin, and you're an hour from Milwaukee. And so and it's a big enough town. It's not like a podunk nowhere. And they're also putting in a commuter train next year, I believe, into Chicago to Rockford to Chicago. So there's definitely growth there. They also have the airport, which Rockford is like the eighth largest freight airport in the nation. And yeah, so there's some potential here for growth. And I think the dollar amount, like I said, you can go on the MLS and buy stuff all day for 150, 130, that are in good shape, single family homes that people raise their families in their entire life, and then turn around and rent it. Right now, rents are, if you've got a good 3-2, I mean, you're looking at 1,700, 1,800, starting to push
Wow.
1,800. You know what I mean? And if you're buying it at 150 and putting 5 into it or 10 and turn around and rent it, and that's on the MLS. If you could multiply that with, all right, we're going to buy something that needs renovation for 80 and put 20 to 30 into it, and then have a house that's worth 150. And not only that, now I can turn around and burr it and refinance it, get all my money back.
Mhm.
And they're paying more than what, and like I said, I'm cash flowing with $0 into it, and I have this huge write off. So it's like, that's the other side. That's the buyer side, the long term hold side, and then the short end side of it. And I think they're both fantastic ways to do business. And I think all the Marines out there that are listening that want to get started, wholesaling is great because one, it gets your teeth wet or your appetite wet, sharpens your teeth a little bit and gets you eyes on what's going on. And you can kind of look at everyone else's successes and failures as you only hold them for a short period of time and see what you need to do. And you're kind of building that, like, hey, I need a contractor, I need a flooring guy, I need a roofer, whomever. You start making those contacts, and now when you start picking stuff up, you might sift through it, like, what, I like that. I think I'm going to hold on to that one.
Dude, there's a couple things that you just hit that I freaking love that you guys were able to listen to, right? When he talked about Rockford, he didn't just talk about, right, the monthly amount that you can cash flow, right, the amortization. He didn't just talk about why he likes it because it's so cheap. He talked about the airport. He talked about public transit. He talked about how they're growing, right? He talked about the budget the city is giving. He talked about gentrification. Those are all things that when you guys want to focus on your own market, you guys want to go in your backyard, when you guys want the longevity of a portfolio, that is crucial. How close it is to bus stops, right? Is there major metropolitan areas near? Is it close to workplaces? Is it close to a major grocery store, right? Those are all things that you want to look at when you are renting. And what he just gave you on the inside is why he likes it so much. So he says, hey, I can kind of go anywhere, right? But here's why I like this, which means stability, right? It shows that he understands the foundation of his area, which is why I love Texas so much. It's actually why I love flipping in Scottsdale so much, right? So we don't want to recreate the wheel, but these are all really good things. When you guys look at wanting to park money in your backyard, you guys get a couple novations done. You go to David saying, dude, I got 30, 40K. I want to get a couple sub twos. What do I do? It's not just looking at the return on investment, right? You want to be able to see the area and make sure in 10, 15, 20 years that this is going to be a sustainable way to live as well for your area, right? So I do love that you hit that, David, because that's a small thing that we always tend to forget when we're looking at, trying to cash flow.